The day I got back from deployment was supposed to be ordinary. The military changed my return date without much notice after our mission ended earlier than expected, and I decided not to tell anyone. I imagined surprising my roommate, unpacking my duffel bag, sleeping in my own bed for the first time in months, and finally leaving behind the endless noise of helicopters, dust, and sleepless nights. I had spent so long dreaming about home that I believed nothing could ruin that moment. As my taxi pulled into the familiar apartment complex, I felt a strange mixture of relief and nervousness. The building looked exactly the same, but I was no longer the same man who had left months earlier. Deployment had taken pieces of me that I wasn't sure I would ever get back. The hallway smelled like fresh paint and old carpet. Every step toward my apartment felt heavier than the last. I unlocked the front door as quietly as possible, hoping to surprise my roommate Tyler. Instead, the surprise belonged to me. The apartment was unusually quiet, except for soft footsteps coming from my bedroom. My heart instantly began pounding. I slowly walked toward the partially open door, expecting maybe a thief or someone making repairs. But when I pushed the door open, Tyler turned around with a face so pale it looked like all the color had drained from him. His eyes widened with pure panic before he whispered the words that would stay with me forever. He simply stared at me and said, "You weren't supposed to see this." For a moment, my mind raced through every terrible possibility. I expected betrayal, stolen money, or some secret that would destroy our years of friendship. Instead, I saw dozens of cardboard boxes stacked carefully against the walls. My military medals rested beside framed photographs of my parents. Old letters I had written years ago were spread across my desk alongside notebooks I barely remembered keeping. Nothing had been stolen. Everything I owned had simply been gathered together as if someone was preparing to move my entire life somewhere else. Confusion replaced fear, but Tyler looked too shaken to explain anything immediately. His hands trembled while he struggled to find the right words, and I could see tears forming in his eyes. Only after several painful minutes did the truth begin to unfold. During my deployment, Tyler had received a military notification that no friend ever wants to see. A patrol in our area had been attacked, and because of a paperwork error involving identification numbers, the official report mistakenly listed me among those who had been killed. Before the mistake was corrected, several people had already been informed. Tyler believed I was gone forever. He had spent nearly 2 weeks grieving before another officer finally called to explain that I was alive. But something had changed inside him during those terrible days. Thinking he had lost his closest friend forced him to realize how much of my life existed only inside dusty boxes and forgotten memories. Since then, he had quietly started organizing everything, determined that if anything ever happened again, my story would never disappear. Listening to him broke something inside me that I had kept buried throughout deployment. I had survived explosions, long nights under enemy fire, and the constant fear that every goodbye could be my last. Yet I had never truly considered what my absence would mean to the people back home. Hearing Tyler describe those days of believing I was dead filled me with guilt I couldn't explain. While I had been fighting to survive overseas, someone else had been mourning me here at home. Neither of us had chosen that pain, yet both of us had been carrying it alone. The following weeks became harder than deployment in ways I never expected. Everyone assumed returning home meant everything would immediately become normal again. It didn't. Loud noises made me flinch. I woke up in the middle of the night expecting alarms. Crowded grocery stores left me anxious, and even silence sometimes felt unbearable. Tyler never pressured me to explain what I had experienced. Instead, he simply stayed present. He cooked meals when I forgot to eat. He waited outside my bedroom after nightmares until I calmed down. Some days we barely spoke, yet his quiet presence reminded me that healing doesn't always begin with words. Sometimes it begins with someone refusing to leave. As I slowly unpacked the boxes Tyler had organized, I rediscovered parts of myself I thought had disappeared forever. There were childhood drawings my mother had saved, photographs of fishing trips with my father before he passed away, handwritten birthday cards from my younger sister, and journals filled with dreams I had written long before joining the military. Reading those pages felt like meeting a younger version of myself who still believed the world could be simple. I realized deployment had not erased that person completely. He was still there beneath the fear, exhaustion, and grief. I simply had to find him again. One afternoon, Tyler handed me a small envelope he had found tucked inside one of my books. It contained a letter my father had written shortly before he died years earlier. I had completely forgotten it existed. In that letter, he wrote that courage was never about pretending to be fearless. Real courage, he said, was choosing kindness after experiencing pain and choosing hope after facing darkness. Sitting alone with that letter, I cried harder than I had cried during my entire deployment. For months I had convinced myself that surviving meant hiding every emotion. My father's words reminded me that surviving also meant allowing myself to feel. Those words slowly changed the direction of my life. Instead of isolating myself, I began attending meetings with other veterans who understood the invisible weight we carried home. Listening to their stories made me realize I wasn't broken beyond repair. We all carried different scars, but every scar represented survival rather than defeat. I started volunteering at a local community center, helping young people who dreamed of military service understand both the honor and the sacrifices that came with wearing the uniform. Rather than hiding my struggles, I spoke honestly about them. Surprisingly, honesty connected people more deeply than strength ever had. Months later, Tyler admitted something else. During the days he believed I had died, he blamed himself for every argument we had ever had, every missed phone call, and every moment he failed to appreciate our friendship. That experience taught him never to postpone gratitude. His confession inspired me to reconnect with family members I had unintentionally pushed away while trying to appear strong. I visited my mother more often. I spent weekends with my sister and her children. I learned that healing wasn't only about recovering from war. It was also about rebuilding relationships that fear had quietly damaged. The apartment itself slowly transformed alongside us. The boxes disappeared, replaced by framed photographs celebrating life instead of preparing for loss. The room that had once represented confusion became a place filled with laughter, shared meals, and long conversations about the future. Neither of us forgot that painful day when I unexpectedly walked through the door, but we no longer viewed it as the worst moment of our lives. Instead, it became the moment that forced both of us to appreciate every ordinary day we almost lost. Years have now passed since that unexpected homecoming, yet I still remember Tyler's frightened expression and those unforgettable words. At first, I believed I had walked in on a terrible secret. In reality, I had walked into an act of love created by someone who thought he would never see me again. Sometimes the greatest surprises in life are not betrayals, but reminders of how deeply we matter to others, even when we don't realize it ourselves. That realization became the foundation upon which I rebuilt my entire life. If this story touched your heart and reminded you of the importance of friendship, family, forgiveness, and second chances, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who may need a little hope today. Your support helps bring more meaningful stories to people who may be silently fighting their own battles. Before this story comes to an end, I would love to hear from you. Please leave a comment below and tell us about someone whose quiet support changed your life when you needed it most. Your story might become the encouragement another person has been waiting to read. Life rarely gives us warnings before everything changes. Sometimes we return home expecting comfort only to discover hidden pain. Other times we uncover unexpected proof that we were loved more deeply than we ever imagined. I survived deployment because of training, determination, and a little luck. But I truly learned how to live again because one frightened roommate spent days preserving the memories of a friend he believed was gone forever. That experience taught me that while wars may leave visible and invisible scars, love has an extraordinary way of finding those broken places and patiently helping them heal. In the end, the greatest victory was never making it home early. The greatest victory was discovering that home had been protecting a place for my heart all along.